how do you intend to gain possession of this land that you want, and how do you intend to get there?
It's a contribution that the black man made in this country, which amounts to 310 years of slave labor, for which we have never been given a dime or a cent, places a burden upon the American white man today for which the government should pay. Since we cannot live in peace together, mixed up on this continent, the alternative to that solution is to divide a separate part of this country into which our people can migrate, and in which the government again should supply us with the machinery and the tools necessary to establish our own independent society and our own independent country. And in this way, it will be creating a solution that the black man himself, our people ourselves, can bring about if we have that capability. And for your clarification, because this has been brought up, some people say, well, why should the government do this? If this government can send billions of dollars to communist countries like Poland and Yugoslavia, and to neutralist countries in Asia and Africa who have never made any contribution whatsoever to the sum net worth of this economy and country, and at the same time, this government feels that it is too much to set about something real to solve the problem for the slaves who made a greater contribution even than your people did, why the government doesn't even deserve to continue to function as a government.
What land is available that's not already possessed by others?
When you came to this country, the land was inhabited by the Indians, and you didn't have any problem then.
Free the land, battle cry in our freedom call. Political prisoners in the system, we say free them all. You hear the call, haters never wanna see you ball. But I'm a freedom fighter, I just wanna see them fall. Standing tall, cause we trapped in the system. They slapped us in prison, just a part of capitalism. I'm a revolutionary, I adapt to the system. I ain't playing with y'all haters, I come strapped when I kick them.
Black fist in the air as we walk through the door, representing Malcolm X and Assata Shakur. Queen Mother Moore, Batula, Shakur. Fight to free the land is what we doing it for. The struggle, the leader, for Huey, Mamiya, Garvey Fred Hampton, General Hamisha, Grandmaster Teacher, he's blasting y'all, you're gonna feel it. The voices of New Afrika.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Afrika.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Afrika.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Afrika.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Afrika.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Afrika.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Afrika.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Afrika.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Afrika.
Free the land.
We got to have thinkers that are going to direct us in terms of how we're going to be able to achieve the goal of liberation throughout the world. We have the same problem. That is neo-colonialism. We have no control over any area in which we live. Matter of fact, we have been diminished, and all of those things have happened under the American system of capitalism. That's why we're saying we want to break away and create our own, and have our own self-government, and have our own control over our lives.
You're listening to the Voices of New Afrika, where we educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. Free the land.
Great.
And welcome to another episode of the Voices of New Afrika. Really, this is the return of the Voices of New Afrika. It seems like we've been gone for a long time, but really we have not. We have actually continued to be doing our broadcast on the radio show, radio station, local right here in Idlewild City. But this is the return to our online reiteration of the Voices of New Afrika. And of course, my name is Brother Prophecy, and I'm here with my comrades right here to my right. You see Grandmaster Teacher. How you doing, Grandmaster Teacher?
I'm doing as great as I can under the system of neo-colonialism that is possessing our land and our freedom.
Okay, I'm having an issue with your mic.
Yes.
So we're gonna have. Yeah, we're gonna have an issue with your mic, but we're gonna fix that. I hope. Comrade Kakayi, how you doing, brother?
Free the land by any and all means necessary. Free the land.
Definitely. So like I said, this is the Voices of New Afrika, and we might have to redo some stuff for our comrade for Dolly, because when he came in, his microphone was not activated, so I can't activate it right now. So what I need you to do is, when I get y'all off stage, yeah, yeah. But yeah, this is the Voices of New Afrika, the show where we educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. I'm the host, Brother Prophecy, and let me see if I can get y'all off of you know, the whatchamacallit. I guess I can't, man. Y'all gotta bear with us, man. It's been a minute since we've been online. Yeah, it's been a minute since we've been online, so.
So you should have a mic, man.
He got a mic. Nah, he don't. So, but yeah, like I said, a lot of people might be wondering where we have been, because about a year ago, I actually had a heart attack. And first of all, I want to say big shouts out to everybody, and probably what's going to have to happen is I'm probably going to have to go out there and get it, and you're going to have to take over the show. But I want to give a big shout out to everybody who gave me all the support while I was going through my ordeal. Like I said, about a year ago, I had a heart attack, and it required open heart surgery. Now, it's crazy thing, because this was a shock to a whole lot of people. It was a shock to a whole lot of people because, man, what's going on with my stuff? Because, you know, I've been a very healthy individual. I've been, you know, a vegan, workout, exercise. So when I had a heart attack, people was like, man, what the hell? You, Brother Prophecy? How you have a heart attack? And you know, basically what it was I had a health issue. I had an issue with my heart that I was born with, that I never knew existed. I had a basically what they call an anomalous, I'm murdering that, a right heart artery. One of my heart arteries was supposed to be going to the left. Going to the right, but it was actually going to the left, and it was compressed, and it was squeezing up against another artery, and it caused, you know, the blood flow to my heart to decrease, to ultimately one day I had a heart attack. And when they discovered it, they basically said, you know, you have to have heart surgery because you are at risk of sudden cardiac death. You know, when you see a lot of these athletes who just pass away on the field or the court or what have you, and just, you know, out of nowhere, it was like I was dealing with the same situation. I could have died. Really, up until this point, all the training, all the workout, all the sports, the MMA, everything that I used to do back in the day, I could have just passed away. So, you know, I'm really fortunate. Some people will say blessed, whatever you want to call it. I am still here. Like I said, I went through the whole process of having a heart surgery. Y'all see, I got the zipper. You know what I'm saying? I'm a part of the zipper club. But let's be clear. You know what I'm saying? Ain't nothing like a little heart attack gonna stop me or prevent me from being, you know, exactly who I am and doing what it is that I have to do, and that is the struggle for the liberation. You know, and it seems like you might feel that we've been gone for a long time, but the reality is we haven't. It's just we have not, you know, been doing the online thing. But like I said, I want to thank everybody for your support and all of those things. But yeah, we're here at the Voices of New Afrika, where we educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. I'm gonna leave for a second. I'm gonna turn it over to my man Kakayi. How you been doing, man? And we're part of something called the New African Independence Movement. That's what we struggle for: land, independence, self-determination, reparation. Like I said, we got a lot of technical difficulties because we just restarting this, so bear with us. But Kakayi, man, you know, kind of explain, you know, what is the New African Independence Movement? You know, what's our goal and our objective, and why is it so important that we're struggling for land and independence and all of these type of things? You know what I'm saying, comrade?
Yeah, man. It's very important that we understand what our purpose and goal here is in life as New Africans. You know, it's not difficult. It's just hard to believe a lot of the things that these Europeans have done over the past, and simply to stop us from being independent and free. And so there's a lot of different aspects of the New African independence movement. And as we go through those different aspects, we must know that our goal is to strive for obtaining, maintaining independence through our own independent sovereign nation. And we got together in 1968, and we talk about our independence and freedom. We came together with our own Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and we created the Code of Umoja to let the world know that we're declaring our nationhood as an independent sovereign nation, which represents 5 states. And those 5 states are Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. And as we continue to move forward in our struggle for independence and freedom, we have developed a movement called the New African Independence Movement that carries that on and that legacy on. And I know that Grandmaster T, you back? You back?
Yeah, I'm actually back, and y'all gotta bear with us because, like I said, we're kind of rusty, so we had a couple of technical difficulties, but I think we got everything else back running right. And Grandmaster Teacher, how you doing, comrade? I got your mic on.
I'm doing great. We as a people steadily beginning to understand what is happening in the world, and I'm very elated about that.
All right, comrade. Definitely. You know what? We might as well just jump right into the show because we've been going for like 12 minutes and we haven't really even just jumped into the show. But we always like to start the show out talking about something, world events and what's been going on in the world with what we like to call Around the World in Black Again.
Live from Ida B. Wells City, spanning from Africa, Asia, all the way to the United States of America. This is Around the World in Black Again.
It's the news, y'all, what's going on? 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 And this is Around the World in Black Again. And of course, I guess one of the main things that we want to talk about, one of the top things is just last night, there was an airstrike on Iran by the United States. Now, this was a conflict that is really between Israel and Iran, and really, well, I'm gonna turn it over to our Grandmaster Teacher, and you're gonna fill in all the details of what's going on with this particular, what's going on with that.
Yes. So when we talk about what's going on in the so-called Middle East, around Israel and around the United States, and in relationship to what happened last night, the United States went in to try to see if they were going to try to mop up what Israel had been trying to do for about 8 days. And the United States went in and bombed certain areas of Iran that's supposed to be dealing with nuclear uranium, mines and stuff. And so when we talk about it,
I mean, we've been talking about Gaza. Israel is still bombing Gaza. Israel is still now has ventured into Iran, and this is what we got to begin to understand, because this is happened time and time again. We know that when we talk about what happened to Hezbollah in Lebanon, in which Israel went in and killed off most of the leadership and bombed, Iran to the extent that Iran is supposed to be in like a ceasefire with them, and they're still bombing Iran. So while Trump, the president of the United States, was talking about having peace talks with Iran, this was a subterfuge and allowed Israel to go in and bomb with 200 planes in Iran, and knocked out much of Iran's ability to respond to aircraft coming across. And Donald Trump had been talking about peace. He wanted to have peace talk with Iran, and during the process of having these peace talks, it basically, what they have, it shows you deception, that allowed Iran to come in during the time that Donald Trump had 60 days of so-called talks with Iran, and on the 61st day, Israel was unleashed to go in to destroy as much as they possibly can of the infrastructure of defense in Iran. And so even in this period of time, they had a subterfuge that Iran did this alone. And it gets to what we were talking about, the tail wagging the dog, that Iran is created to be the bully in the Middle East for the so-called West. And so when we look at what's happening, we see that they have basically attacked Iran at its weakest point. I'm talking about the United States and Israel. And they've done this before. I'm talking about, if you go back to looking at under Obama, Libya was dismantled by the United States role in knocking out the airplanes and things, where Gaddafi couldn't be able to defend his own country. And they take advantage of whatever differences that are in, and that is where people are opposed to their own government, and they were able to assassinate Muammar Gaddafi. And assassination is the game all the way through. When you go back and look at what's happening, they have assassinated basically all the leaders of Hamas. They have assassinated all the leaders they could in Iran, and Mossad, which is the Israeli CIA, had basically infiltrated Iran and killed off 25 scientists who were working on uranium enrichment inside of Iran. And this is what we have to begin to understand in terms of what we're talking about, because even in the United States, we see Trump and his minions basically talking about anti-Semitic, anti-Semitism, and to the point of where they're using the troops in California and other places, the National Guard and the Marines. And so this is a dual strategy. That is to not only knock out the so-called enemies of the American empire on the outside, dealing with Iran, and putting out a lot of lies and things about Iran, and knowing that Iran was isolated, it had been isolated, for a long time. So finally they have come to the point of feeling that they could knock out Iran. And the history of Iran goes back not just to 1979 when Iran waged this revolution and kicked the Shah, who has been supported by the United States, but it goes back to 1954, in which the United States installed the Shah in 1954 election, because in the 1954 election, Iran was basically getting ready to have a socialist government. That's a lot of people don't think that this is all about Iran, being enemy. Iran was a pawn. The Shah was their pawn that was ruling Iran, and it came after World War II. And so when we began to look at that, then we see that what we got to do and understand, get our people to understand that the danger of this kind of engagement is to push for alliance. People are, having alliances, because Iran has been basically denuded of its allies through the operation of Israel in Lebanon, in Syria, and in all the other areas around Israel, because they want, and Gaza in particular, and the West Bank. And one thing we got to begin to understand is that this is the United States role as a bully in the world, and the United States had set up Israel as its main bully, that is to eliminate any kind of so-called anti-American interests. And so, and then we got to understand too that they have divided up the people in what they call the Middle East. That is, that the people that call themselves Arab and the people that call themselves that are Iranians, who are Persian, and have created due to the religious differences, even though they're all Muslims. At the same time, they have basically a denomination, Shiites and Sunni, and to the point where the Arab world, represented by Jordan and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the Emirates, U.S. and the Arab Emirates, have and who are the richest people in the Middle East and richest people in the world, have allowed themselves to become a part of the American attack against Iran. And this is where we got to really begin to understand. And at the same time, they are starving the people in Gaza, starving them to death, and bombing and still bombing in Gaza, to where we're going to see total genocide as a result of the activity of the United States and Israel in the so-called Middle East.
A lot of good points. You talked about a lot of things there. Since we've not been on our social media platforms in a while, it's a lot of things that we have not talked about. And since you did, kind of segue with the genocide that's going on in Gaza, which this is a genocide, and the people, you have to understand, all of those who look back and reflect on what happened in Nazi Germany with disgust and says, oh, this was just terrible. How could they do that? Understand the same thing is happening right now. So, if you just want to check your moral barometer or whatever, where are you right now? On what's going on right now. But speaking of genocide, and I want to revisit a story that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, because my bad. Let me get you off there, Grandmaster Teacher. Yeah. Let me revisit a story that we talked about a few weeks ago, because a few weeks ago, the president of South Africa came to the White House with a meeting with Donald Trump, and basically he was kind of blindsided because Trump is accusing the South African government of committing genocide on white Africans, white South Africans. They call them Afrikaners. They call themselves, Afrikaners. But the reality is this so-called genocide does not exist. This genocide is not real. And the thing is during that meeting, this globally televised meeting, there was information that was presented that was false. Basically, false information was presented to justify really Trump giving refugee status to white South Africans to come over here in America, when in reality there is no genocide going on in South Africa. The evidence that Trump put out basically was false information. He had a picture of an actual genocide that was going on in the Congo, I believe. He actually presented African people who were being murdered in the Congo as evidence of white people being murdered in South Africa. This is misinformation, false information, just basically lied. He put on the movie screen, the television screen, that they said that this was a big mass graveyard of white South Africans who were murdered, when in reality it was a protest that happened 5 years ago of this couple, a white South African couple who was murdered. And the perpetrators of that murder, the individuals who murdered this couple, was actually brought to justice, and they're in prison now. But Trump used that visual to say these are mass graves. So he basically just lied on the world stage to basically make South Africa look bad, and claim that there is a white genocide that does not exist, while ignoring the real genocides that are existing, the genocide that exists in Gaza, the genocide that exists in Sudan, the genocide that exists in the Congo and throughout the world. You're saying nothing about them. In fact, the individuals who are suffering those genocides can't even come in the country. There are individuals who are actually, man, you coming back in twice, bro. Don't just leave it alone. You good. There are individuals who are getting kicked out of the country, to have to face possible real murder, possible real crimes. So I don't know if you've been hearing that, Grandmaster Teacher, but I was talking about the story that we discussed about South Africa. You have any insights to that?
Yes. So when we talk about South Africa, like South Africa charged Israel with genocide at the UN, and genocide in Gaza, and South Africa has been the leading force that led to the vote that the UN declared Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, and another defenseman, I can't think of the name, as war criminals. They're committing war crimes in Gaza, and so when we look at that in terms of talking about South Africa, we have a lot of problems with South Africa, because white people are still have 64% of the land, and they got more than 90% of the wealth that's coming from the different kinds of mines, the diamond mines, the gold mines, and different metals and stuff that South Africa is so enriched with.
What's the population of white South Africans?
The population of white South Africans, they're like 4% of the population.
And how much land
they got 64%.
And how much of wealth again?
90% of the wealth.
I want to make sure y'all heard that.
Right. So therefore, when we South Africa, the South African government, the one that just got recently elected, is trying to basically get a certain percentage of the wealth that's coming from the metals that that the whites basically have owned, because they own all the gold mines and diamond mines, and they have been trying to come up. They came up with a figure of trying to get 30% that would go to the Africans, and so basically we see these white South Africans, the 59 that Trump has allowed to come to America. They are like giving $5 million a piece to the United States government in order to settle in the United States, which means that they are taking the wealth out of South Africa. Their run is to take the wealth before they are forced to give even Africans a pittance of what they're receiving out of these mineral resources that South Africa has. And this is really important that we understand, that we go back and try to see in Africa what's happening in terms of Burkina Faso, and they're going to have a July the 4th. Is that the July the 4th? Yeah. Alliance of Africans coming together to begin to reclaim the wealth of Africa and to break away from the World Bank and the other International Monetary Fund, and these are the kind of things that we are not getting the information that we should be getting. We need to begin to link up, and particularly the Republic of New Africa need to link up with all these forces so that we can begin to build our alliance, so that we'll be able to make our move when we're able to make our move, because there are a lot of things that are happening even in the 5 states, in Georgia and Alabama, and our people are still under oppression, and even when they're like 75% of certain populations, the mayors and stuff don't have the power. I can't think of one of the cities, but the mayor didn't even have a key to City Hall, and so they have moved to arrest this mayor and arrest the people who are doing the election, because they're trying to get power in the hands of the government, but they have no power, and so we have to begin to understand that in our process of building our nation, we got many problems in Mississippi, and Alabama, and Georgia, and South Carolina, and Louisiana, and our people are under the worst condition in these states in which we are comprised close to the majority, and we began to. And so, link up. We need to link up internationally, so that we won't be put in a position of being isolated and eliminated by the United States government. And I know a lot of people don't want to. They think they can make a deal. It's showing you. I mean, the things we're talking about in terms of what's happening to Iran, showing you that there's no negotiation. They're going to do everything they can to eliminate even the people who are negotiating. They assassinated them so that the deal could never come. Because and let me say this: when we talk about our morality is different from the morality of the enemy, and so therefore we cannot begin to take on the enemy morality thinking that we're going to be able to advance. The enemy is an evil enemy. Iran called them the great United States the great Satan, and they called Israel the little Satan. But when it comes down to it, we don't need to do it on religious terms. We got to understand revolutionary terms. And so one of the things when we make our analysis, we'll find that Iran basically was divided. Even though it had the revolutionary guard, it also had the mullahs. The religion will never be the solution to solving the problems of the people. And so therefore, we got to find a unity within a revolutionary unity. And hopefully Iran, even though they have eliminated some of the top leaders of the revolutionary guard, will come together and be able to maintain itself. And so and this is what they've gotten us involved in all that, even when we deal with Hamas on the religious thing. In other words, we got to do scientific socialism, because it's going to keep us from doing being what they call that when you look at thinking mystical. Yeah, mystifying, and we got to be scientific, and we got to understand what's going on, and then we got to understand what are the problems within the revolution, wherever the revolution does exist. What are those problems? How do we solve those problems? How do we solve those differences that exist within the population? Because it's the only way that they're able to be successful is that they create division. And we got to understand why Iran wasn't in a position to confront Israel, because of the sanctions that had been put on them by the West. And so they were not able to modernize their aircraft and everything else, which allowed Israel, who had the benefit of the greatest, what they call that, scientific weaponry that the United States has given them.
Modern technology.
Right, and technology. And so the reason Iran is in the position it's in is because of the sanctions, and because it has become isolated in the area where it is, and then even overall globally, the Chinese are not in position to help them, and Moscow, Russia, is not in a position to help them, because they've been tied up in another war in Ukraine.
Definitely great analysis. You talked about a lot of different things. You talked about you were saying something about the continent, about what's going on in the continent. And I want to kind of jump on that, because there's been a lot of great activity in the continent that we have not, shared with our social media audience, but we haven't been on. So there is a brother by the name of Ibrahim Traoré, who is the president of Burkina Faso, and he's actually been doing some great things, and his name is really blowing up, and he's becoming the face of liberation of really our entire movement globally, the whole African movement, especially that in the continent. This brother, which Burkina Faso, his country, was under the control of the French colonizer, and it was really more of neo-colonial control during the time that he took power. But since he's been in power, he basically kicked out the French military, because they had a military base there. He also nationalized their gold, Burkina Faso's gold, broke the ties with the European mining companies that were exploiting the resources of Burkina Faso, gave his people, for the most part, universal health care, also gave his people free education all the way up throughout college. So, they don't have to worry about those student loans and stuff like that that's been killing us. And basically, the standard of living and where he's from has just been raised, 10 times fold. He's been doing an excellent job, and a lot of people have been rallying behind that. But because he is breaking that stranglehold of dependency that African people have on the Western power structure, and starting to do something for himself and being successful with it, and actually putting pressure on other African leaders to do the same, the European power and Western powers have now looked at him as, one of the biggest threats to their status quo, and they have come for them. Particularly, like in the United States, one of the heads of AFRICOM, which is basically the Berlin Conference all over again, just another institution trying to recolonize Africa and gain control of the resources in Africa. But this brother by the name of General Langley, came out publicly in a hearing before Congress and stated basically a bold lie that Ibrahim Traoré was using the goal of Burkina Faso to support his own personal agenda and basically not using it to support the people. And this is from the old playbook. Basically, you demonize someone who they consider to be a threat, which he is, a big threat. But you demonize him first in the media, assassinate his character, and therefore justifying a physical attack, going in with your military, or assassinating them, or creating some kind of government overthrow. Which they've done time and time again. They did it to Kwame Nkrumah. They did it to Patrice Lumumba. They did it to Thomas Sankara, which is really, his predecessor as far as a revolutionary leader. They assassinated those brothers and overthrew Nkrumah. And basically the same playbook, right on point. But the difference is the world saw that, and the world recognized that, and the whole African international community rallied behind this brother in defense, of this brother, and really attacked this Langley, and this whole Langley brother, which is a black man, basically has been the face of neo-colonial coonism and whatever you want to call it. This how they prop up an African face to attack other African people in order to justify taking out somebody who's actually doing something that is benefiting the people. So that's been a very interesting dynamic, and our brother Ibrahim Traoré actually addressed this himself with in a passionate interview where he said that one of the most disappointing things was not the fact that this was a general who lied on him, not the fact that he was from the United States, but the fact that this was a black man that lied. And they always use black men to attack people who are actually benefiting black people, African people. They did it with Gaddafi, with Obama. As he was talking about how they attacked Libya. People don't realize that, you can say for all of the faults that Gaddafi had, Gaddafi was doing some great things for the African continent. He was helping to sever those ties of dependency on these systems of white supremacy, and taking the resources of Africa and using it for the people of Africa. That's what he was one trying to do it. He was doing that, and he was taken out. And we find our brother Ibrahim Traoré in the same situation. Everybody that's out there looking, like I said, this is the reboot of our social media platform. We no longer do the radio thing anymore. They actually stopped today, so it's time to get back online with the people. So everybody out there who listening, give us a shout out. Check in, give us a comment. Big shouts out to Imani. How you doing? Thank you. Free to land to you. By any means necessary, I am my will. But yeah, we've been talking about Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso and the great things that he's been doing, and how the Western powers are attacking him, and how we as a people globally are not standing for it. And as my comrade Grandmaster Teacher said, they're actually having like an international rally behind not only Ibrahim Traoré, but the whole concept of Pan-Africanism and us taking control of our own destiny of self-determination, self-government, independence. They're labeling this is an International Independence Day type thing on the 4th of July. Not the American independent, but internationally. African people taking control of our own destiny, especially over in the continent, because the continent, Africa, people who believe that Africa is poor and you have poverty, and the poverty that you see in Africa is not indigenous of Africa. That is something that was put on Africa by the European power structure, by unjust laws, conditions handed down by the IMF and other economic gangsters that are exploiting the wealth and resources in Africa. That's what you see in Africa. That is why you see the poverty in Africa. But Africa is actually rich. It has the most gold, the most diamonds, the most uranium, the most oil, the most ore, all of these natural resources, which is real wealth, not this fiat money, but it's real wealth. It is at the hand, it is in Africa. So what's going on in the continent is a beautiful thing where you see our brothers and sisters waking up and finally taking control of their own resources and using it to benefit our people. But did you want to jump in, Grandmaster T?
Yeah. AFRICOM was set up by George Bush and implemented by Obama when Obama became president. Set up AFRICOM. AFRICOM it's on one of the little islands right off the coast of Africa. Its base is there, and basically they have been having drones going across North Africa and East Africa, and particularly in Somalia, and particularly in places like Nigeria and different places where they said they're fighting so-called Al-Qaeda elements, and these are the kind of things we have to understand. And then I think the other thing that we need to do here too is in terms of our state way is also understanding the question of migrants and immigration, because they are basically trying under the guise of saying anti-Zionism, grabbing people out in America, not just Mexicans and South Americans, but also Africans, from not certain like Nigerians and different places, and they're doing, and when we deal with the immigration thing, it's something that they are taking from what they saw in Europe, where Britain is trying to send anybody that's immigrated into Britain over to the middle of Africa, to not Botswana. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, I wanted to say that to say, and African people who must begin to understand that this relationship that we talked about having an alliance, that the Mexicans are, particularly the Mexicans, are the people who were, because half of the United States used to be Mexico. And we got to understand that. And then in the Chicano Mexicanos who are in the Southwest and in Los Angeles and places like that are basically breaking out in rebellion to expose the United States government in its attempt to basically throw out anybody that comes from anywhere else, to the point of where they are creating what they call it, ICE, which is the government troops who are basically going in and kidnapping people and putting them in prison and send them out. But by the same token, here we see Africans in the United States that are that in many cases that have been here for a number of years. I'm not talking about just us Africans here, but also Africans who are from many of the countries that we talked about have been exploited and have been lured to come over to the West, thinking that they're going to become, so-called citizens and becoming rich as a result of their moving out of the conditions of poverty that have been created in Africa, and that my brother just talked about. And so I think that what we have to do is begin to understand that in our attempt to do our 5-state, nation, that the other people who are here and the Chicano Mexicano people are calling for the Southwest, whatever it's called, Southwest United States, has been their nation. And so we can link up and begin to understand that our fight is their fight and their fight is our fight. and we don't want to be try to divide it up because some have mistakenly, just like some Africans think they're Americans. We have some Hispanic that think they're white, and they are all part of the process of confusion, and because the white population is diminishing, in terms of birth rates, and so a lot of things is happening because they're trying to make America great, go back to where they had all the power. They're trying to do, they're basically dividing up and sizing others up to the point of where this is where we have to begin to make sure that we build our infrastructure for liberation.
And I wanted to kind of add to this point of view. Yeah, because you made a lot of very great points. There is this narrative that's kind of floating around within our community, especially when you see the oppression going on with our brothers, our Chicano brothers, as well as the South Americans, in the so-called mass deportation strategy and is going on right now. A lot of our people are basically taking the stance of this is not our fight. We're saying we're tired. We've been doing this for many, many years, and they haven't been standing up for us. And when they do stand up, they just get what they need, and then they just leave out, and we're still stuck here. So we're tired. We're staying out. And first of all, I want to say I actually do understand that sentiment. I understand that, like Grandmaster Teacher said, there are a lot of I don't want to say Chicano, because if you identify with a Chicano, it's Chicano, then you already have a revolutionary mentality within you. But there are a lot of Mexicans and South Americans who have come over here and have identified with whiteness and tried to enjoy a certain proximity to whiteness. I understand that exists, and I understand the animosity that they may create because of this particular dynamic. And understand, they learning now. A lot of them learning now that you ain't right. But the reality is that whole position of this is not my fight. They won with us, so we ain't gonna be with them. That whole position is not a revolutionary position. It's not a political position. It's an emotional position, and you don't win your liberation based on emotional positions. You don't guide yourself based on emotion. Like Grandmaster Teacher, we guide ourselves using a science, the science of struggle, the science of revolution. It's not about how I feel, about what I think, how I think it ought to go this way. No, there is actual critical analysis that goes on. We are putting together our plan, our goals and tactics, in our grand strategy to gain liberation. And as Grandmaster Teacher alluded to, the white population birth rate is decreasing. Like for the longest, it's been at zero. For every white person that's born, there's a white person that died. Their population is not increasing. This whole anti-abortion thing, that ain't for black folks, them for them white folks, because they want their population to increase. They don't give a damn if we abort all our babies. I remember years ago, it was one of these white nationalist type people who said, "Hey, you want to get rid of crime? Just abort every black baby." Ha ha ha. Basically making a slick genocide joke. But this whole concept or idea really reality that the white population is dropping. Meanwhile, the South American and Chicano population and the Africans in America population are increasing. In less than 20, 30 years, we will be the majority. We will be the majority, and with numbers comes power. Period. Now we will have to decide how we choose to use that, and we already know how we want to, what we want to do. But what I'm saying is this whole narrative that ain't our fight, we ain't trying to ally with them, blah blah blah. That is to our detriment, because there is a political opportunity to gain a strong a political stronghold. And I'm not talking about Democrat, Republican when I'm talking about politics. You know, I'm talking about, you know, you have elements, revolutionary elements within the Mexican population, those who identify as Chicanos, who are fighting for independence, and they're right there with us. In fact, they're some of our biggest supporters. So big shouts out to all of my Chicano brothers and sisters. You know, but like I said, there's an opportunity for a strategic alliance that will benefit both sides. Because as we see in the example of Iran, you cannot be isolated. You have to have allies in a struggle, especially against the enemy in which we are fighting. We're not going against Glass Joe from Mike Tyson Punch Out. We're going against the beast. So we need strong alliances. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And these individuals have made a lot of enemies, you know, so we have to be strategic, we have to be scientific, and we have to proceed in that manner. And you've been real quiet, so you know I ain't gonna let you be quiet too long. Come right here. So jump in, man. Jump in, join the conversation.
Well, yeah, well, I was just waiting, you know, but we're gonna have to change the cadence on how we come in, because you know, I can't remember stuff, so I have to start writing stuff down and remember. It's a lot. You know, I mean, it's a lot. And we went from character assassinations and all that. I wanted to talk a lot about that, to Bikini Fossil, you know, to socialism, you know, Chicanos, South Africa. You know, there's a lot of things that's going on in the world. And one of the strategies that our European enemies and their descendants use as a tool is chaos and confusion. And the way they go about doing it is that they control the destiny of everything that's going on. And we have to, like Grandmaster's teacher said in the intro, sitting here in the show today, you know, we have to get away and take control of our own lives. And that's the problem. We got so much to do to start taking back control of our lives that sometimes we get divided, we get caught up emotionally. You know, my brother Yair was pointing out a lot of those things, and that confusion and chaos sometimes get us away from the ideology and philosophy that we should have. You know, number one, when they out to get us, they have a template that they go by, and they use it against all of our potential homegrown in-house leaders. They do character assassination first. A lot of us can't even make it through that because we're trying to be so much like them and be a part of a capitalist system that we have to bow down there or go through their second level of attack, which is financing. Because if you've accepted their capitalist system, then you're chasing the purses that they're offering you to survive. And that's why we got a lot of our brothers being neo-colonialists, because they're caught up in the capitalist system. They practice individuality. So when they come with the right amount of money and you can take care of your family and friends, you don't care about the rest of us. And they got you then. But if you got some type of intestinal fortitude and character about yourself, and you don't break on the character assassination, on the finances, economics, then they will literally assassinate. And that's why we got to protect our brother Traore from Bikini Faso, because that's what they're gonna do. They're in the first stage right now with the character assassination, but they got a already pre-prepared neo-colonialist, which is this black dude Langley from the United States military, who is all about being an American and not an African, who can't see through the light that this is what they've done all the time. They get a Langley to do their dirty work so they can have their hands free when we start pointing out the truth. And the bottom line is, people, we cannot get sidetracked from knowing that the main thing is the main thing. And we need to have our independence and freedom, our own independent sovereign nation, control our own lives, have our own land, cultivate and dominate the resources in our own land. And they coming after him with the head. They coming for his head. If there's a trend that starts where all the African nations start doing those same things he's doing. You know what? If you know the history of these Europeans, they divided that up. And when they divided it up, the person who was losing the most in the so-called New World got the most in Africa. And that was the French. Because the Spanish and the English took over the so-called New World. So when it came to taking over Africa, the French took over, dominated. That's why those white people live in France with no jobs, walk around all day, own property, own land, and they get us to go over there and pay all this money to live there, take all our resources out of Africa, and then guess what? Got the audacity to tell us we need to pay them for what they losing when we put them out. Isn't that a repeat of something? Haiti? Thank you. And I rest my case.
That was great, Grandmaster Teacher. You want to jump in?
Afrikaans. We talk about Afrikaans. We talk about that brother. They have institutions that are designed to try to recolonize Africa. That's Afrikaans. It's part of the matter of fact, it's part of the base that the United States has. It has a base in Europe, a base in Asia, a base in North America, all of that. So AFRICOM is one of those institutions that are set up to basically try to get the United States more in charge of what's going on the African continent. So it's not individual. Okay, so it's also we got to understand we're not dealing with these. That's an institution that is created, and this brother represents that, as being the leader of that institution. That, like I said, that was originally set up by George Bush, but actually came into being under Obama. And once we understand that they got these institutions that are designed to overthrow, any kind of legitimacy that Africans have in terms of control of their own land. And this is what we got to really begin to understand very clearly. And they got one set up for South America, and keep Brazil from becoming, the African nation that it should be, in the Western Hemisphere. So when we look at these kind of things, I think what we're saying is that we got to organize. In other words, and we got to understand class struggle. We got to understand class. What are these classes that have been? Because there are classes of people that have been created that we call the petty bourgeoisie, or the bourgeoisie, which means capitalist class. These are capitalist classes, and they have divided us, of the people of the world, throughout with the into classes, and so it's not this individual. This individual doesn't have no power. He's part of an institution, and a class that's created to basically trying to copy the European. That never happened because the Europeans are controlling all the resources of it would have to be a nation state set up like China, and we got to go back and look and see how China got to be where it did in terms of, because it was conquered just like Africa was conquered, and all the other parts of the world and the European, and so. And the Berlin they have these conferences, we started with the Berlin Conference in 1884, 1885, in which they divided up not only Africa but the rest of the world for the European. And so this was the second part of the what they call it, the conquering of nations. The first came in up until 1830. Going back from the beginning, looking at South Africa, looking at when the Europeans, began to go in these areas and take them over, and so, but 1885 was a key conference that divided up. I mean, that made Africa to 50 different locations, and under 4 or 5 different European nations, and the United States was at that conference, because the United States had Liberia, and so when we look at that and see what we're trying to do, we're trying to put back together, our whole national structure, and when we talk about building, breaking off here and having our own nation here, and by the same token, we understand that it has, just like Palestine, had to get the UN to declare that Palestine is a state. Mm-hmm. We have to also come in agreement with international institutions, and to get alliances so that we can have our recognition as a nation state. So I think it's important. I think today we've had a great discussion to start off our new venture.
Definitely, because we've been on for an hour now, and it's almost time for us to go and wrap up. But a couple of new things that we got going in motion right now. We started this thing. It was actually a local radio station here called the Music of the Movement. When you just looked at brother Ibrahim Trailway, actually was a part of it. There was a video, actually, in which a song I wrote that was dedicated to Burkina Faso, but the movement of the Music of the Movement. This is an initiative to promote music that is dedicated to the liberation of our people, dedicated to the fight against colonialism, neo-colonialism, white supremacy, imperialism. It is really music that is designed to uplift the people, and we will probably start some reiteration of the Music of the Movement radio show live probably here on NABA, and I'm pretty sure that slowly but surely our other shows will come back online, and we're gonna be coming full force. But like I said, got the movement of the music, and if you don't, you want to learn more about that, just go to look up a Facebook search for Movement of the Music, and you can join our Facebook page. You can look up a lot of the music that we produce on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeart, all of everywhere music is played, and you can actually purchase it. And you can do that, support the movement. But we're about to get out of here. I appreciate everybody for tuning in and bearing with all of our technical difficulties and our, rustiness as we're trying to brush it off and get back into the swing of things, doing this social media thing. Before we get out of here, Comrade Kakayi, you got anything you want to say to the people?
Nah, just keep your head up. We gonna get there.
Okay, all right. Mother Fadali, you got it, man?
Yeah, we must organize ourselves into a collective and make that collective powerful enough to bring about the creation of a new world. That's it.
Definitely. And I definitely feel those sentiments, and that's true because, like you said, man, the world is changing. We're at a very important time because you're seeing a global paradigm shift. That's one reason why you see, a lot of escalation within Israel, a lot of escalations within the United States, because they understand that the world is changing. People who have been marginalized and oppressed are coming to power and waking up, and this is a wonderful thing. So we have to make sure that we are doing the correct. We are strategically putting ourselves in position so we can strike when the time is right, and we can, make sure that we are on the correct side. We're in the correct position when this whole shift ultimately, when we get on the other side of it. But we're going to actually leave y'all here with the song that is dedicated to our comrade, brother down up in Burkina Faso, our brother Ibrahim Traore. And this is the song dedicated to him. This is called Raise His Name, Ibrahim Traore. See y'all next week. This is Brother Prophecy for my comrade Kakayi and our Grandmaster Teacher. We leave y'all with free the land, free the land, free the land.
Ibrahim, he changed the game. While others talk, but remain the same. Ibrahim is here to make a change. We say his name, we praise his name. Ibrahim. He changed the game. While others talk but remain the same. Ibrahim is here to make a change. He may be young, but he's much wiser. He kicked out the French colonizers, took back the gold, here to build his nation. He gave his people free education. He became the face of black liberation. Won't back down from their intimidation. No more corruption or exploitation. Ibrahim Traore, that's elevation. We say his name, we raise his name. Ibrahim, he changed the game. While others talk, but remain the same. Ibrahim is here to make a change. We say his name, we praise his name. Ibrahim, he changed the game. While others talk, but remain the same. Ibrahim is here to make a change. They tried their best to take him out, but he's protected, that's without a doubt. Fighting for the people, what he's about. The colonizers, he kicked them out. See, Africa has been invaded. They robbed us blind, left devastated. Now he's taking back what God created. Thomas Sankara reincarnated. We say his name. He changed the game. While others talk but remain the same. Ibrahim is here to make a change. We say his name. Ibrahim, he changed the game. While others talk but remain the same. Ibrahim is here to make a change.